Hello Divination and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show you step by step how to create a beautiful full screen product page for Divi. This is the final result we're aiming to achieve. So without wasting a lot of time, let's dive in and let's get started. All right. So the first thing we need to do here is to install WooCommerce. Now, WooCommerce is a free plugin that allows you to create an online shop. So go ahead and install that and activate it. Now, once you activate WooCommerce, you're going to get this entry here, which says products. And you also see WooCommerce here on the side. So what you want to do is to create a brand new product. So I've clicked on add new here and I've named it smoothie. Over here, you want to add your description, and then on the right here, you want to add your product image. So I've just added an image here for my product, and then continue on by adding a price. So I've added a price over here, $9.99, but of course in your case, you can add whatever price it is. And then here you also want to add your product short description. So pretty much that's all you need to do here to add a product, and then you want to hit publish. Now, when you hit publish, you still want to stay on this page because the next step here is very important. Over here on the page layout, you want to click on this drop down and say no sidebar. So once you're done with that, click update and then click on use Divi Builder. So now we have the ability to start designing our product page now using Divi. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure I click on build on front end. Right, so this is our layout on the front end, but you know what? We don't really want to use this layout here because this is what you get by default when you use Divi. So what we're going to do is we're going to build this from scratch. So we're going to come over here to the top and delete this section and start from scratch. So I'm going to go ahead and delete it. And then what we're going to do before we add any sections, I'm going to come over here to the top left, and I am going to start customizing this. So making sure that I'm snapped over here to the left. I'm going to click here on design spacing. So the first thing I need to do is to add my padding, and we're going to set it as 5VW, and this needs to be applied both to the top and the bottom. And if you notice, I activated my chain so that my value is the same both to the top and the bottom. Next, we need to come over here to advanced and then click on visibility. So this is where we need to adjust our overflows. So on the horizontal overflow, I need to set this to hidden, and I also need to do the same on the vertical overflow. There we go. So now I've set my overflows. The next stage now is to add our column structure. So I'm going to save this, click on this plus button, and the column structure I'm going to go with is this one right here. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. Now, before we can do anything here, or before we add any modules, let's go ahead and do a bit of customizations to this. So I'm going to click here on my row settings. Next, I'm going to click on design sizing. So here I need to adjust my gutter width. So I'm going to click on yes to use custom gutter width. Now this is where I can adjust the space between the columns. So if I drag this all the way down to 1, it means that I won't have any spaces between my columns. All right, so moving on over here on the width, I want to make sure that this goes edge to edge. So I'm going to set this to 100%. Next, on the maximum width, I'm also going to do the same and set this to 100%. Right, so now that we're done with these settings, I'm going to go and set my Z index. All right, so the next step is to come over here to the advanced tab and click on position. So this is where we need to set our Z index. So currently it's set at 0, so I'm going to set it to 10. Next, I'm going to come back over here to content, and then we're going to go into column 2 and make some adjustments there. So over here, I'm going to click on this gear icon and then click on background. So here I'm going to add a gradient. So I'm going to click on the second tab, click on this plus button, and let's add our first color. So the colors I'm going to use here are specific to this design, but if you want to use the exact same colors, I'm going to leave a link in the post in the show notes below to show you, the article that has all the settings. All right, so I'm going to add my second color here. So my second color is going to be white. So I'm just going to override this like that. And then next on my gradient type, I'm going to change this from linear to radial. And then moving on, our gradient direction needs to be set to center. And then I'm going to set my start and end position to 66%. So I'm going to go ahead and add that. And now you can see that this is the shape that we have. And what we're going for is pretty much a circle. So now that we have that, we're going to save. And then we're going to save one more time. It's time now to add all our modules. So let's start by adding our Woo titles. So the easiest thing to do here is, instead of cycling through here to find it, what I do is I just start typing in the module that I want. So I'm just going to start by typing Woo, and I need titles. So I'm going to just add my title like that. And then you want to make sure that it's set to this product. And you can see here mine has brought the name, which is the smoothie. Now let's head over to the text settings. So I'm going to click here on design, title text, and then I'm going to change this to Montserrat. So I'm going to search for my font. And by the way, this font is free. So you just have to search for it on the Google Fonts. And here it is. I'm going to select that. And then I also want to set this to ultralight. So for the text alignment, I'm going to set this to left. But when it comes to the mobile devices, I want to make sure it's centered because it looks better that way. So I'm going to click here on this little icon, click on tablet, and then I'm just going to make sure that this is centered on the phone. Same thing as well. So back over here to my desktop, the next stage now is to set my text size. So by default, it's set to 30 pixels. I'm going to set this to 9VW. So you can see here it's massive, but pretty much that's the design we're going for. The next step now is to head over to sizing. So over here, I need to make some adjustments to my width. So I'm going to start here with my desktop. So currently it's set to auto. I'm going to set this to 50VW, and that's going to be for the desktop. But for the mobile devices, I'm going to make sure that this is set to 100%. Now, the reason why I'm adding all these values on the mobile device is just to make sure that everything looks pretty nice on different devices. All right, so now that I've added that, the next step now is to add some margins to my module here. So I'm going to scroll down here to spacing. And for the top margin, I'm going to set this to 14. And for the bottom margin, I'm going to set this to 5VW. And then for the left, I'm going to set this to -11. All right, so the next step now is to head over here to our transform. And then what we're going to use here is transform rotate. So on transform rotate, I'm just going to go to the first item here and set this to 270. And now you can see that this is now being transformed, and that's exactly what we need to do. So now pretty much this is done. Now it's time to go to the second module. So I'm going to save this, and then over here, I'm going to add my product to the second column. So I'm going to click on this plus button, and what we need here is the images. So I'm going to search for Woo images, and here it is. I'm going to select it and make sure it's set to this product. So the next stage is to add rounded corners to our image. So I'm going to come over here to design, and then I'm going to go to border. So making sure your chain is activated here, I'm going to set this to 1VW. So that's going to add rounded corners to our image. Next, we're going to go to a box shadow here, and I'm going to go and choose the first option. And then I'm going to make a few adjustments here as well. So the box shadow blur strength needs to be adjusted. So I'm going to change this from 18 to 50 pixels. And then I'm also going to add my shadow color. So I'm going to scroll all the way down here to my shadow color. In fact, you know what? That color is okay. All right, so the next thing we need to do is to go over here to our last column. And here we're going to add our Woo description. So I'm just going to search for Woo description. Now, before we continue, I also would like to remind you that over here on the images, what I did, I had to go back and choose an image that is more of a portrait rather than landscape, because that's what's going to work better over here. So make sure that the image that you use is portrait. Okay. So over here now I have my Woo description, and making sure that this is set to this product. And also here you need to make sure that it's set to short description. Now let's customize this text by coming over here to design, text. We're going to change the font to Montserrat. The font style needs to be uppercase, and the size is going to be 1VW, and the line height is going to be 1.8. Now for this, we're going to add some letter spacing. So here on the letter spacing, I'm just going to set this to 0.007 VW. And then over here on the text alignment, I'm just going to choose the last option here. Now let's add our spacing. So I'm going to scroll all the way down here to spacing. And here I'm going to add my top margin of 9 VW. And then the left padding of 2, because as you can see here, things are quite too close to the next column there. So I'm going to set this to 2VW, and over here on the right padding, I'm going to set this to 5VW. So pretty much that's all I need to do here. I'm going to save. And then the next step is to add our price. So I'm going to click on this plus button and search for Woo price. There we go. So I'm going to select it and making sure it's set to this product. So what we're going to do here is we're also going to customize it just like what we did before here, because we don't want to use the same styling that comes in by default with the Divi. Okay, so now I'm going to go to design and then price text. So I'm going to change this to monster ad. And then next, I'm going to come over here and choose my color. So I'm going to click here on this eyedropper tool and paste my color. Now, if you want to use the exact same colors as I'm using in this tutorial, I will leave a link to the post in the show notes below. Next, let's add our size. So I'm going to set this to 3VW. And then our price line height needs to be set to 1.8. So as you can see, we still have pretty much a similar issue that we have, which is everything is way too close to the edge there. So we also need to fix that. So the first thing we're going to do is to come all the way down here to spacing, and we're going to start by adding a top margin of 4VW. And then we're also going to add a left and right padding. So I'm going to set this to 2VW, and I'm also going to do that to the right. So now you can see that we have a decent space there between the columns. So pretty much that's all we need to do here. I'm going to save. And then the next step now is to add the add to cart. So I'm going to search for add, and there it is, add to cart. I'm going to select that and also making sure that it is set to this product. Now let's customize this and make it look similar to the colors that we're using here. So let's start off by coming over here to design. And what we're going to do here is to go into the fields. So the field background color, we're going to add this color right here. So this is a really dark gray or very close to black. And then we also want to set our field text color. And this is going to be white. So that makes it easier to read. And then we're also going to change our font by coming over here. I'm going to choose monster ad. And then let's add our size. So currently it's at 20 pixels. I'm going to set this to 1VW. And then we also need to add our fields rounded corners. So to do that, I'm just going to scroll all the way down here until I find fields rounded corners. Now this needs to be set to 50VW, and make sure the chain icon here is activated so that the corners will be applied to all the sides. Now let's work on our button, because as you can see here, the button here is pretty standard. So I'm going to click on this little brush tool, and then over here on the settings, I'm going to activate use custom styles for button. So let's start with our button text color. So over here, we want to set this to white, and I know I've used white before, so I'm just going to click here on recent colors and choose white. Next, I want to come over here to my background color, and I'm just going to paste my background color in here. And then moving on, I am going to remove the border width, set this to 0. And then I'm going to set my size. So for my button size here, I'm going to set this to 1VW. And then let's add our font. So I'm going to come over here to my button font and choose monster ad. So the reason why we're choosing that is because we just want to make sure that we're consistent with our design here. Okay, so now that we have that, the next step now, because as you can see, our button here looks really, really small. So we want to give it some space around it. So I'm going to start by going over here to our padding, and I'm going to set my top padding to 1VW. In fact, I'm going to set top and bottom to 1VW. And then I'm also going to set my left and right to 4VW. Okay, so now our button looks much better. Now let's add our spacing, because as you can see over here, we're way too close to the pricing. So let's add our top margin, and we're going to set this to 2VW. And we're also going to set our left margin, and we are going to set this to -3VW. And our right margin is going to be 5VW. All right, so pretty much this is our final design. So let's say you want to add this and save it as a template. What you need to do is to click here on this little button here at the bottom, and you can save this to the library. So let's save this and take a look at what this looks like. So I've saved the page. Now I'm going to exit the Visual Builder. And here it is. So this is our final design. So there you have it. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and do follow us on our social media platforms. By doing so, you'll be notified every time we release new tutorials. Until next time, thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next video.